So we're going to start. So hi, thanks for coming. Thanks for skipping lunch or having a short lunch before coming. I'm Julien Lepine. I'm solutions architect for AWS. So what's a solutions architect and what's AWS? These are some of the questions I'm going to try to answer today. So the solutions architect is a technical representative of AWS working with customers. So I'm working on a day-to-day basis with customers all across EMEA, and for my part, specifically around Microsoft workloads. That's why I'm going to be here. AWS, what's AWS? We'll quickly go around what's in it and why do we do that. So AWS is the cloud, as you may have heard before. So what's a cloud? A cloud is a global platform that you can use at the tip of an API. And that's really the goal of it, is for you to be able to use a platform wherever you want with a single push of a button, call of an API, or a single program. So AWS is a platform that has 11 regions around the globe, and each of these regions is composed of clusters of data centers. So if we take the island region, that is the closest to here, we have 3 availability zones. So an availability zone is a set of data centers that don't have any common risk profile with another availability zone. So you can, and that's exactly the goal of it, you can architect highly available infrastructure just by using AWS in a single region. So we have 28 of these availability zones, which are clusters of data centers. An availability zone is at least 1 data center, and the biggest region has availability zones that can have more than 5 data centers. So we have quite a bit of data centers, and that's really what you want in the cloud, is to have a large infrastructure that you can use. But using the cloud is also to target your customers where they are. So it's easy to use infrastructure, but you need to have performance wherever your users are. And for that, we have a content delivery network that's called CloudFront that has 53 edge locations. So really, the cloud is a global infrastructure you can use. You specify exactly where you want to deploy your infrastructure, and we want to move that. So if you want to have data that is stored in the European region, you can have data stored in Dublin or in Frankfurt, and it's never going to move from there. But what to do with this infrastructure? So we have a large set of services. The first services I've just talked to you about are the regions, so 11 around the globe, availability zones for high availability, and a content delivery network. On top of that, you will start by using the network. So it's the one on the far right for you. So network gives you the ability to have a complete control over the networking architecture of AWS. It gives you the opportunity to integrate that with your data center or with the data center of your companies, with partners, over VPNs or over direct connections. We also provide, and that's the gist of it, storage and compute. So you can have unlimited storage in AWS, and you can start machines from really small machines to really large machines. On top of these foundational services, we have a large set of services. We have more than 40 services available right now that span from databases. So you can use exactly the same databases that you've been using on premises in the cloud. So it makes it really easy to transfer infrastructure from your premises to AWS. NoSQL databases, as well as caching. And I'm not going to go through all of them because otherwise we'll still be here tomorrow. So really, you can think of AWS as a platform that gives you the opportunity to host the infrastructure you already have in the cloud, and then to use a large set of services that will remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting that you have to use. So basically, when you deploy a database on your premises, you have to install it, configure it, maintain it, make sure the backups are good, patch it, so make it highly available, manage the replication. So there's lots and lots of work to do to have a database that is working on premises. When you start using managed services from AWS, starting the database is really a few clicks. And making it highly available is really simply ticking a box in a wizard. And the database is going to be fully available, managed, backed up. You can have automated patching and version management. So that's for AWS. I'll stick here in the end, and we have sessions in the coming days if you want to see more about what's in it. So what's with AWS and Windows, because it's a specific talk about Windows. The goal of using AWS when you have Windows or .NET or any kind of development is you can build on your existing knowledge. So you can use the same OSs you've been using from Windows Server 2003 up to Windows 2012 R2. You can choose from a large set of images, or you can even import your own existing images. So let's say you have made some customization to the OS and you want to keep them, you can also import them. You can use the platforms you want, either to run application on AWS. Since Windows, anything that runs on Windows is going to run on AWS. But we also have, and we'll see, SDKs that give you access from the .NET framework, from Windows Phone or Windows Store, to the AWS cloud. So if you want to have storage in the cloud from your application, whether it's a desktop application, server application, or other Windows Phone application, you can integrate that directly to AWS with the .NET SDK. It's also fully integrated with your development environment. I took some time for a demo by the end of the talk. And you can also use any server software you've been using. So whether it's SQL Server, vStore, or any of the enterprise applications from Microsoft, so say Exchange, Office, or Dynamics, SharePoint. Yeah. Anything that can run on the server is something that you can deploy, license, and support on AWS. But AWS, as I said, is here to remove constraints. You have unlimited capacity. So we have 28 availability zones. Each availability zone is at least one data center. That's quite a bit of data center and compute power. And you have access to everything really easily. So you can provision one instance, which is a virtual machine in the language of AWS, or start thousands of instances. It's going to be the same code, it's just the values that you need to change. So just make sure that you don't get the wrong value, because chances are we're going to start 1,000 instances and bill you for that. So just make sure that you know what you start on AWS. You can also start database, store data, and if we take the example of Amazon S3, it's a service that's been 9 years old just a few weeks ago. It stores billions and trillions of entries directly on Amazon S3, and if you're using Dropbox, if you're using Netflix, that's been launched last year in the UK, most of the data, if not all of the data, is stored on Amazon S3. So it's really something where you can store any amount of information you want, and it's really a key factor of making sure the cloud works. It's reliable. I've told you about regions and availability zone. You can design applications that will be highly available. Some examples are the NASA landing of Curiosity on Mars. They had an infrastructure that was sending more than 500 gigabits of data over to the internet when it landed. And it was an architecture that was spanning all around the globe. So it was available even in the event of a failure of more than 8 availability zones. So it's really something that can be highly available. As I said, and we'll show, everything is at your fingertip. It's a single call of an API, a click in the console, or just any program you write that is using the SDK. And finally, that's the goal of it, is we want to make sure you spend your time providing value to your customers and to your company, and not just managing infrastructure. So everything is programmable. What we do as AWS is we provide you endpoints, and then on top of that, you can use any platform you want for running this. We provide SDKs that are integrated with .NET Framework, but we also have them for Java, Ruby, Node.js, Go, Python, so lots of SDKs. And basically, we have low-level APIs and some utilities that make it really easy to interact with the cloud. You don't want to have hard-coded values for machine names and stuff like that. We provide utilities that really simplify the access to the platform. Last but not the least, we have tools that help you quickly integrate with AWS, whether it's PowerShell commandlets. One of my colleagues is going to present the Windows PowerShell commandlets tomorrow. A toolkit for Visual Studios that I'll show you today. If you have session states in ASP.NET, we have a drop-in replacement for a session provider that's going to use DynamoDB, which is one of our NoSQL database for storage. And this session provider gives you a stateless architecture that is really nice for scaling. We also have trace listeners and many other tools for making sure that your application can run efficiently and even more efficiently on the cloud than it would do on premises. So what to do then? Really simple. When you start your application, you want to get an idea. That's something we cannot help you about. You will have to get your ideas first. Then you will want to plan for security. Security is our #1 priority. It's going to be either you are working for an SI, ISV, so a contractor is working for your customers, or you're working for a company, let's say financial sector. Security is going to be a key concern for you. So you want to have security that is built in from day one in your application, and you want to make sure that you can control anything that is happening in your architecture. So you want to plan for security. Then you want to develop your application. using the SDKs and using all the tools, and everything that you'll be seeing pretty much around these 3 days are things that you can use on AWS. You want to deploy your application, we'll see we have many options for deploying the application. And then finally, you want to measure and iterate on your application. And that's really one of the key points in the cloud. And what you've seen just before on behavior-driven development, it's really that. You start small, you do things, you measure how it works, and you iterate. And measuring, iterating is really a key to having an agile and a linear architecture. So we'll go with a small demo, if the screen is okay with that. That's not. Up. Here we go again. So it's Visual Studio. I took the community edition because it's just more simple. We have a Visual Studio toolkit that basically gives you access to anything from AWS directly from Visual Studio. So when you start, you'll see on the left we have a list that gives you access to all the regions where AWS is available. So we have all of them. And you can access the services directly. So Amazon EC2 is a service that gives you access to starting virtual machines in the cloud. Amazon RDS is a database, so you have a list. So it's not an exhaustive list because we have more than 40 different services, but you can use them directly from Visual Studio without any constraint. So what we do just now is create a quick project and interact with the AWS platform directly from Visual Studio through .NET Core. So I'm just going to create a new project. Opening a new one. New project. My computer is going to take minutes. I don't know Visual Basic, sorry. I'm more the C# guy. That's just me. So if I go to C#, I should have an AWS menu. And what I'm just going to create is an empty project. So I'm not going to name it, I just want to create it. This project is first going to ask me for a profile. This profile is what I said before, the credentials you're going to use for accessing the platform. So it's the number one thing in security you want to have, is making sure that you're having access to the platform, and you're just having the right level of access you have. So it's just a way to have users on the platform, and this is the thing that is going to be used for accessing AWS. Then you want to choose a region. In here, since we're in the UK, I'm going to use the Ireland region, and just press OK. It's creating a simple project. You'll see the project is really just a simple project, nothing fancy about it. We just have one reference that is used for accessing the SDK, and we have just 2 lines in the app.config file. The first one is the name of the profile you've just been using, so default here, which is my dev account, and the region you want to use, so EU West1. I could change to any other region just by changing this value. Then it just created a program, which is an empty class. So everyone can see on the screen, or do I need to zoom in it? It's good? Okay. So it just created an Amazon S3 client. S3 is one of the first services that has been released by AWS. It's storage in the cloud. So here, I'm just going to create an Amazon S3 client and leave the default values. Creating this client just gives me access to Amazon S3. What we'll just do here is list the buckets that are existing on my platform. So I'm just going to create, just ask S3 clients to list the buckets that are available on my platform. So it's just a simple code, S3 clients.buckets. And here I can just iterate a simple for each. Buckets, and just write the name of the buckets. Oops. Buckets dot. If it's no, that's me. The buckets. It's the name. Yeah, never do live coding. It's always a bad idea. Yeah. Anyway. We want to have this working. So it's a simple account. I just have one bucket, And in here, I can store, for instance, if I take Dropbox, with just this simple entry, you can store all the data that's been stored for every single user of Dropbox since it started. So a bucket is really just an entry in which you can store any amount of data you want. So what we want now is we just want to create a new bucket. So for creating that, we just create a string. And your 2015 browser 24, 25, okay, not, but that's okay. Just a CD name. And we're just going to ask S3 to create a bucket. Put bucket. So a put bucket is just the simple code that gives me the opportunity to create a bucket. And if I just do that, specifies the bucket name, which is going to be the name I've just created up. And I want to use the existing region I'm using. So we just have a keyword that is use client region that says I want to create this bucket in Ireland. So if I create a bucket in Ireland, everything is going to be stored in the Ireland region and it's never going to move. And that's really a key point you want to keep in mind. If you have any compliance need because you're processing personal information from European customers and stuff like that, you want to use the Ireland region, so which is going to be Ireland or the Frankfurt region, which is still going to be in the European community, and the data will never move from that region. And so we just create that, and if we run, and I just made a mistake in typing, as usual, yeah, semicolon. And here, I just created a bucket, and the new one exists. So we can just create it, and if I go to the AWS Explorer, here I don't have it. If I just refresh Amazon S3, I can see that the bucket is not created. So now, since it's created, I can browse into it, I can upload files. So it's really a data store that is remote, so it's not something you will mount and use on your local drive. It's not a local drive, it's really an API that is available from over the internet, but it really is really easy to use. So if you want to store data in Amazon S3, instead of having a put bucket called here, you can just remove the content. You can do just a put object, and put object is again a pretty simple query. You just put a key name. The key is going to be it's going to be a text file. We have text files. And if you look, we have many different properties that give you access to whatever you want. Here, I'm just going to send a file, a text message to it. So I'm just going to have the content body property specified. It's just a test file. And just by putting that, the data is now stored in Amazon S3. So it's already stored. Oh, just it. No. As usual. Never do it enough. Because I quit it. Come on. My screen is too small. I have my notes just in case. That's the easy thing. And these are the wrong ones, as usual. Don't worry. So you should have only key and content body. And since I'm just presenting something, I'm not going to go to the end. Sorry about that. Oh, yeah, I know. If I put something, I just need to put it in a bucket. No one told me that. You're not listening. And that should be much better. So it works. A bit of stress. That's okay. As I said, never do live coding. It's one of the worst things you have. And if I go to my bucket, I can see that I have the test.txt file, so it's really easy to do something with the bucket. So what you can do once you're in here is really to use the application and to make sure that your applications are well architected. We have a few different principles on AWS for making sure that your application are going to be well architected. I'm not going to go into too much details around it. Is you want to have stateless application. It's really something that you should be considering from day one when you design an application. You want your web servers, your application tiers to be stateless. So having a stateless tier, application tier, means that the sessions are going to be stored somewhere, and you may want to use Amazon DynamoDB directly for that because it's really easy. So if you want to create a NoSQL database, just to show you the difference between deploying a NoSQL database on premises and using DynamoDB, you just put a name, put a hash key, and put the capacity you want. And here, I've just created a table. This table is available. I can start using it right now. It provides me 3 input and output per second. If I wanted to scale that to 1 million IOs per second, that's just a few clicks in the console. So here it's a demo account. I won't get to 1 million IOs because I don't want to be yelled at by accounting. But I mean, you can just scale it as you want. Second thing you want to have for a highly available infrastructure is you don't want to have batch processing done on the web servers. You want your web servers to be serving requests to your customer, and you want to have batch servers that are running any heavy utilization process. To do that, you need to have queues, because you want to have the web server just taking the request, sending a message to a queue, and just pulling the queue from another place. So making that is, once again, really simple. You just go to Amazon SQS, Simple Queue Service. It's a nice name. You just name a queue, press OK. Again, you have a queue that has been created. And once you are in Visual Studio, what you can do pretty easily, right now, we have a new SDK that's just been made in preview. So if you go to the References tab, you can add a reference. It's going to be just a .NET DLL. You get the new version of the AWS SDK, and if you want to go to, and if you want to use Amazon S3, Amazon SQS, up, you can simply go Q equals new Amazon SQS, and it's going to be resources API up, SQS up, and here I can get a queue by name. So if I just put the name of my queue here that I've just created, which is demo test, here I can send a message, and here you've got the list of different things, and we can just send a message, and the message can be as simple as making sure that here I just output a string to it. Up, I run, it's already finished, and when I go to AWS Explorer and just double click on my queue, you can see that my message has been posted. So using a queue that used to be a long and cumbersome process of making sure that you have all the infrastructure set up, making sure you have all the SDKs, all the setup, it's really as simple as writing 2 lines of code. And here I have a message that is stored in a queue. This queue can scale to thousands and tens of thousands of messages per second, and reading from the queue is really a simple process too. I'm going to stop for the demo because I want to leave you some time for a tea before you get back to the session this afternoon. So I told you about credentials. It's really something you want to manage from day one. Credentials are, if you want to have an image, the keys to your data center. You don't want to leave your keys to anyone that does not need to have access. And credentials on AWS give you the opportunity to really have a really fine-grained security of your infrastructure. You can manage who has access to what service from where. So here I just gave myself access to SQS Amazon S3, but you could make sure that my account has only access to Amazon SQS for posting message between 1 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's it. So let's say 8 a.m. because 1 a.m. I won't sleep. But you can make sure that every user and every system in your platform has only the access they need to have for operating, and not more. So you want to store these credentials. 2 things you don't want to do is to hard code the credentials in your code, because that's just a bad idea. Because one day or another, you'll make a Google search, you'll share some snippet of code, you just put it on GitHub or something, And one of the two first options, which is hard coding the code or something like an app.config file, is something that will be posted on GitHub one day or another. And you don't want to have something that is made public because basically it's making public the keys of your data center. So you want to have something that is really easy and really fine to manage. The .NET SDK has profiles, which is what I've shown you. It's just creating a user, getting the key, it's stored safely on the machine. It's really coming with the application, so you don't have it in your TFS, in your Git, or in your anything. And we also have another process which is called instance roles, and that's the nicest way of managing your security. You will never have to manage credentials again. Instance roles is basically you say that a process that is running on this machine will have access to Amazon S3, will have access to Amazon DynamoDB, or to any other service from AWS. And Amazon manages everything for you. So we will rotate the credentials automatically every few hours. You can have fully audited version, fully managed version of your credentials for nothing. It's a free service for Amazon EC2, and it gives you really a great access to secure infrastructure. So where do you want to run your infrastructure? And it's going to be my last slide, so I should be just right on time. You can run your application in your existing infrastructure. Here, I've just been using my laptop. As soon as you have internet connectivity, you can integrate with any of the AWS services. That works. It's an easy way to leverage some of the so to remove some of the constraints you may have in-house. But it has the problem that you now depend on the internet connection because you're going to have a hybrid architecture. But it's really something that does work. We also have a service that is called Amazon EC2. So it's Elastic Compute Cloud. It's the second service we've released. It's virtual machines in the cloud. So it's what people know called infrastructure as a service. You start a machine, you use it for a minute or for an hour, you tear it down, you won't pay for anything once it's down. So it's really something that is simple to use, yet you can have full control of those machines, the OS, the images, the configuration you want. You can have large volumes, you can have up to volumes up to 16 terabytes of data per disk. So really lots of ways to make sure your architecture is going to be highly available, highly secure, and really fast. You can have AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Beanstalk is a platform as a service kind of service. Basically, you just take the code I've just written, put it in a zip file, and deploy it in Beanstalk. You don't have to manage anything from the infrastructure. Everything is going to be managed for you. So that's really an easy way to start. And since we have many higher level services, you can have blue-green deployments, you can have agile architecture, you can have rolling updates. So everything that you are hearing now around making sure you have a DevOps way of developing things, to make sure that you have a lean infrastructure, AWS Elastic Beanstalk gives you really a quick way to do that. Finally, one of the latest services we've been releasing, and it's been released last week in Dublin region, so you can start using it now, and it's a free service. It's Amazon EC2 Container Service. We call it Amazon ECS. Does any of you have ever heard about Docker? I hope so. Yeah. So Docker is something that is making a lot of noise at the moment, and we have a service that is Amazon ECS, and it basically gives you the opportunity to deploy Docker on AWS. But since it's a Windows talk, Docker does not run Windows. It's something that runs Linux. But our friends at Microsoft have had the great idea of open sourcing the .NET framework. So you can now deploy .NET with Mono and the new ASP.NET 5 runtime directly in Docker containers. So you can create Docker containers with ASP.NET applications that are going to be fully functional and that will use exactly the same SDKs that you do on a Windows platform, deploying on Amazon ECS, and you will have a scalability per millisecond. Really deploying a new container is something that takes a few milliseconds to a few tenths of milliseconds. So it's really, really fast, and you can create destroy environments for any dev test environment or any high-scale application. It's something that can be really, really helpful. So I'm just right on time, so it's 1:45. I want to leave you time for tea and any question. I'm going to stay here until 2 p.m. Until I'm kicked out of the room, probably. So if you have any question, I'm here. We have a booth, the AWS booth down there. We are architects, so we don't do marketing. We do stuff with customers. So if you have any use case that you want to draw, that you want to challenge us with, please come to the booth. We're here all week long, and we can draw things, and we can give stickers and stuff like that. Yeah. Thanks a lot.